if I'm going to settle in some scenario, am I going to settle for the guy that can at least provide the lifestyle I want, that says he sees me as valuable, or the guy that says he wants me to have children?
That's what it really comes down to, is know what your values are and stick to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't have to settle would be my message.
Boys say, oh, well, like, my bro would never do that. Like, my bro would never assault a woman. It's like, do you know your bro? Do you know that she wouldn't assault a woman? If you don't know his partner's name? It's all about us, and it's time to bow down. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Bow Down. Dennis, as always, so lovely to see you, and I'm pretty stoked for this episode. I feel like I've been saying that at the beginning of all of our episodes, but it's true. I love that, you know, we pick things that we want to talk about, so I'm excited to hear your thoughts about Materialists.
Yeah. Also wonderful to be here as always. You look radiant today, actually. You look
Thank you.
incredibly radiant. So good on you. I don't know why, but keep on keeping on.
The inner light, I suppose, is shining today.
Well, it's maybe it's shining more brightly, but it's
Right,
always bright.
right.
So, it's always
you.
shining. But yeah, I loved this movie, and it was there was a lot to think about, and I'm glad. I mean, so full disclosure, like you recommended it to me. We've been talking about this for actually a couple of months, and I guess it was in the theaters, and didn't get a chance to see it, but I was able to watch it last night on. I was able to rent it, and really enjoyed it. So I can't wait to see where we go with this. A
Okay.
lot of different places. So
I will say right off the bat, to show my hand a little bit, I'm not a fan. So I think this will be interesting to see, like, the difference in our opinion about how this goes. And I think that there's a lot of really good discourse that the movie sets up. So I'm a fan of I think the director really tried to go for something, and I think there's a lot of things that in the discourse around it that I'm seeing, there's a lot of nuance that I think is missing. But I still do fall in the camp of it's not my favorite movie in the world. So I'm excited to see. So it's been a hot second since I watched the whole thing, but I did read through a summary just to freshen up a little bit. But you watched it just last night. So
I did.
I suppose, yeah, talk to me about initial thoughts, reactions, and overview of Materialists.
Absolutely. So, first of all, I guess spoiler warning. If you haven't seen the movie,
yeah.
you might want to just go watch it or not, depending on how you
Right.
feel. But we will be talking spoilers, so not going to try to keep things spoiler free or anything. So, with that, I'll give you a second or two. You can stop here. We promise we'll still be here after you watch it. Right. So the movie is, to me, an interesting discourse or thought experiment in a sense between love or the idea of love, and how do you define love? I guess is how is how I see it. What does love mean to you? What does love? How important is love? How much of a cynic you are? What is important to you? And obviously, the title "Materialists" talks about. The name is in the title. So
Right.
it's this eternal question of what's is it love? What is love? Is love important? So it follows a matchmaker in New York City named Lucy, who had a relationship with a former lover, who and they seemed to really care for each other and love each other. But he was not a man of means. He was poor, living paycheck to paycheck, was a starving actor, the whole trope. And so they broke up because she got a little bit frustrated with his lack of means that he, although I would argue, and it's something we can talk about, I actually don't think it had anything to do with the money in the first place, because he certainly exhibited some behaviors that were not, that I don't think were necessarily very high emotional
Right.
EQ. So
Right.
it's not like he was presented as a saint. But in any case, she's a matchmaker and matches very wealthy a luxury matchmaker who matches the elite in New York City, which is probably the most materialistic city in the world. You know, New York's the greatest city if you have the money. I
Yeah.
think probably sucks if you don't. In many ways, anyway. And so it's essentially a love triangle, right? You have, and you can see that if you look at the movie poster, you have her and you have the two men behind her, and one of her suitors is this rich uh, uh, Harry is his name, as I recall, played by Pedro uh,
Pascal.
Pascal, who is who I love. I think he was the only reason The Last of Us uh, was uh, was watchable as far as, and he was only in it for a couple of episodes anyway, but the most recent season. But anyway, so he's rich, um, but she doesn't love him, and he doesn't necessarily love her, and which we'll talk about, versus the person that she does love who has no means. And so it's this battle between security versus love, and what does love mean, and um spoiler alert, in the end, whatever that, money loses, love wins. And I think in a beautiful way. I liked that part. It resonated very strongly with me. But I think yeah, I think that, I don't know, does that summarize it pretty well to you? I don't know that
Yeah.
I'm missing within there is an additional plot line that I'm sure we'll talk about with one of Lucy's clients who has a very negative experience on a date where she's assaulted sexually at her home. We never see the man. We only hear the after effects of it and the relational impacts of it. Uh, and so, and there's dealing with that and the grief and the stress that causes is, I think that's probably the other important subplot that we'll probably pick up on. But yeah, so I'll stop there. Is there anything else you want to add to that first,
Yeah.
to the description? Did I miss anything?
I think in terms of like very high level overview, that is very much the journey that we go on. I think the piece that I'll add right off the bat is how clear it is to me that yes, we have this love triangle trope, but the director, I believe her name is Celine, and I'm forgetting her last name and I looked it up, but um I can her intention with wanting to use this trope and turn it on its head, I think is very clear. How effectively she does that, I think is up for debate, but to me it's really interesting how she's trying to turn this trope on its head, because we've seen the trope of like stuck up rich girl picks lowly man time and time again, right? Like Titanic, Aladdin, The Notebook, any Hallmark Christmas movie ever. Like we know this, and I think it's interesting because us as a society tends to kind of enjoy that trope and wants to live in a world where love does win. Like, that is the thing that we value. And yet, culturally, this movie rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, especially women my age and my generation. And I think it's interesting to explore why that is. And I think that the director in this love triangle didn't do the thing that other love triangles do where they villainize the man with means, right? Where it's like, oh, not only is he rich, but he's disrespectful, doesn't understand the girl, rude. And it's like, well, why would she pick him? There's absolutely no reason to besides the money. And in Materialists, it's sure, maybe there's not love there, but he's not a bad guy. He takes care of her. He seems to have an interest in her. They have interesting conversations, and maybe they're not a perfect value match in terms of their ethics and outlook on life, but he's not a villain. And I really enjoyed that setup. And I think the beginning of the movie is definitely its strongest. The other piece in terms of plot that I think is really interesting is the matchmaker stuff that we see and the scenes of Dakota Johnson's character, the main character, talking to people about what they want. And the reason why maybe she has some of these more cynical outlooks on love and life is because she's entrenched in that. Like, it's literally her job to deal with what people want from other people in relationships materially. Like, that is her job. And I do think there's a commentary about like how money potentially changes you. And it's also interesting to see what people are willing to sacrifice on versus not. And of course, this is all written and fictionalized, so how accurate these things are is up for opinion and debate. But I found a lot of it to be pretty accurate and insightful in my experience about men wanting women significantly younger than them and women wanting men that make significantly more than them and are tall. It's like that is certainly something that we see. Um, yeah. So I think that's what I'll add in terms of overview of plot basics.
Okay. No, I think that all of that makes very good sense. I'm curious, um, so I think an interesting so let's start there maybe and talk about the character of Sophie, so Lucy's client, and again, this is the client who eventually does have a nasty situation occur where there was sexual assault of some sort, and there's not a lot of graphic details about it, but apparently the guy that she was the gentleman that she was hooked was matchmade one of the gentlemen she was matchmade with assaulted her at her place, and again, details aren't there, but in before then, there's a lot of conversation around settling for an imperfect partner. Sophie's 39 years old, and to me, she represented the pressure on women to to settle, essentially. You're
Yeah.
39, you should be married. The biological clock, and again, this is me coming from perhaps what society says. So I'm really
Right,
curious,
right.
you know, as 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 a young woman who is in the dating scene, what are your thoughts on the settling on that
Yeah.
conversation prior to the incident as she's trying to find
Yeah.
somebody for?
Yeah. I do think one of my main problems with the movie this question really taps into, which is the fact that being single is not presented as an option. Which I
Uh,
just have such an issue with in my personal life that is a completely valid active choice that anyone, man, woman, or non binary individual, can make. And that is a valid choice to make. And it is just so often left off the table and not entertained. And I think Sophie's character absolutely illustrates this idea that, well, the clock is ticking, so you have to do something because you're going to be alone. You're not going to be, you're not going to have kids. You are going to be a spinster. And not to say that wanting to have a partner is wrong or bad. And I think it's clear that Sophie does want a partner. But for me, I would, if I was Sophie's friend, perhaps, I would maybe pose, why do you really want a partner? And let's start there, not with what are the qualities that you need in a partner, you know, because we can come up with a laundry list of idealized things that would be great to have in a person that you legally bind yourself to for life. But why? What is it about a partner that you are desiring? And is there something you can change about your relationship with yourself to serve some of those needs first that then make finding a partner not just easier, but healthier? So I think her character really does represent this desire that a lot of women feel um to have someone who just sees them and supports them. You know, it's like, I don't even need a perfect guy. I just want someone who is on my team. And I think a lot of women don't feel like they have someone on their team to take care of them. Um, and I think it's interesting that this is one of Lucy's problem clients, right? Because to me, she very much is the most average of the clients, the most typical of what we would come across, because all of the other clients do seem very much like New York elite and a little bit more like picky, a little bit more, this is my, uh, hard line in the sand. And Sophie's a little bit more, I just want someone normal and nice and fine. And she's a problem client. And I found that narrative really interesting, but I do think that that's really accurate, because these clients that are maybe a little bit more materialistic are going to be matched with people that are more materialistic. Whereas someone like Sophie, who clearly is looking for something at least a little bit more genuine and authentic, matchmaking companies probably aren't good at dealing with genuine, authentic clients. And so it's going to be a little bit harder to match her with someone genuine and authentic. And I think there is so much narrative around chop, chop, hurry up, you got to get a partner. And that was actually something that I found really profound about my experience in watching the movie. I went with a group of girlfriends, and the single girlfriends that were there, we all really resisted the movie and kind of had some issues with it. The girlfriends that were in relationships loved this movie.
Mm.
So yeah, thoughts. What do you think? I know that obviously you don't have the perspective of being a woman yourself, but you have a daughter and, are in a relationship or married. And how do you perceive that being communicated to young women? And as a man, what would you prefer the narrative is that women are told?
Wow. There's a lot
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Um, uh, wow. God, I need a second to think about that. Well, I think the funniest part is I am, I think it represents my, my Gemini sun sign in some senses, as well as my, I think my Gemini South node.
Mm,
Um, in that I'm both a complete idealist and yet a ruthless pragmatist. And those two things, um, it's an interesting blend,
yeah.
actually. In terms of, because there's a part of me that would just say, you know, be you, and know what you want in somebody, and know know what you're worth, and don't accept for anything less. And if you want like it's interesting, like even in the scene, there's a scene in the movie where uh a a client comes in, and she has a literally like a 2-page typed Word document or PDF of what she's looking for in a partner. And I didn't take the time to pause it and read what was on the list, and I wasn't quite that Easter eggy interested. But I'm sure it was I'm sure if we did read it, I suspect there was some thought put into it. So it was probably some wild things. If anyone has, I'd love to love to.
Yeah.
I don't know how much we can actually see, so I don't. But my there's a part of me that says, if that's what you want, that's what you should have. Like,
Yeah.
it's okay to want that. But then the pragmatist in me is like, well, so it's like, what side wins? What do you know, what's important to you? And I think it boils down to what feels right for you, and what I would say is confidence, like what people want more than anything else in a partner is somebody, who handles their own tasks and lets you handle your tasks, but they're also there to do things together, and they help, they make your tasks easier and you make their tasks easier, I think
Yeah.
is ultimately what I would say. And you'll know that when you feel it. Like it's like anything else, like to me, and I don't um and so there's a part of me that, the pragmatic part of me is like, hey, and so I think this gets to the love triangle, right? The choice that
Mhm.
Lucy makes is really the question. I think is love versus money. Uh, and to me, I guess I fall on the side of both. Like what is it that you is most important to you? you know, and if it is money, if being secure from a financial perspective is your most important thing, I don't judge that. Like, I
Right.
don't that know yourself. Should it be? Shouldn't it be? I don't think those words know who you are. Stop trying to
Right.
be who you're not. If money and security is something that's incredibly important to you, which is what which is what the character, which is what our character said, and Lucy said in the beginning, is I don't know who it is, but the next person I date, I'm going to marry, and they're going to be very, very, very rich, essentially. Um, I guess it's know what you want. Like
Yeah.
I think that's what it really comes down to, is know what your values are, and you know stick to that. you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
you don't have to settle would be my message. Like, you can, like, that's entirely your choice, but you don't have to. And I think I think a lot of folks feel like they have to settle because of pressure.
Mhm.
And I guess I feel like that you can, but you don't have to. Can you believe that you don't have to, though? And that's the thing. If you believe this narrative of, hey, I'm not special. You know, and you're not. I mean, and you are. It's
Right.
both, like, and I thought it was also interesting how when they were talking about Sophie, it was like she doesn't have a niche. Like,
Yeah.
there's no niche. And I guess the thing I would say is is what I would tell my daughter, I guess, is find your niche.
Mm.
Because, stop trying to be everything to everyone. Stop trying to be what you think other people want, and find your niche. Because everybody has a niche, I think. I'd like to believe. Like, I don't believe, and even people who have no niche, then find another person who has no niche.
Right.
And
Right.
but find your niche, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And trust that there are more than enough people in this world that will fit your niche. But you need to know what your niche is. And if you're trying to make your niche desirable, like, you're trying to market yourself, you're trying to become a niche that's not you, you're not
Eh,
it's not gonna work.
yeah.
So if your niche is I want to be super beautiful and get a rich guy and be and be a housewife that does nothing all day, or lives my life and does what I want to do, I think that's incredibly empowering, and I have no issue with that. But know that, and follow that if that's your true calling. If that's what there's no judgment here. Stop judging that as a thing, but know. And I kind of liked how the movie presented that, actually, in terms of the conversation, the breakup conversation between Harry and Lucy. I thought
Yeah.
so I want to say, first of all, I was the movie did surprise me in some ways,
Mhm.
which, number one, I fully expected she was going to go to Iceland with him, and then there was going to be this thing in Iceland, and eventually she was going to run back to the John, I guess his name was her poor love versus her rich friend. Um, and that didn't happen, which and I thought their ending was a wonderful illustration of actually a mature conversation where things are, I thought it was refreshing. I mean, I'm curious your take on it from your point of view. To me, I felt like, um, well, I felt Harry was vulnerable a little bit in that scene where he really wasn't in other scenes before. I
Mhm.
didn't notice any vulnerability. Um, and uh, so I like the fact that he was vulnerable with, and I think the height thing is something very interesting to talk about as well.
Yeah, we
In
should
terms of,
absolutely dive into that.
that's definitely another thing because, that is a real thing for men. I
Yeah.
think.
So, a few thoughts. I do want to dive into the height piece because I have a lot of thoughts on that. But on there's a lot in what you just said that I think is really important. One is in the question of love versus money, this idea of security, right? And I think that both love and money can provide security, but slightly different types of safety in someone's like nervous system, right? And I think you need both to kind of calm that nervous system, but also based on, early childhood, family of origin, belief system, all of this good stuff. Love and finances can both trigger different aspects of lack of safety or um, desiring a certain metric or bar to be met to feel safe. For someone, I think they said Lucy makes $80,000 a year, which one isn't much. Even
Not in New York
living,
City.
I'm like in Dallas, that's like not a lot, I'll tell you right now. And then in New York City, that's not much. Um, but maybe that's all someone would need to feel financially secure, but they have a different level of what emotional security looks like for them. And I think that that question of what does love mean, this question, the movie also questions what does security mean and what does someone look for to feel secure in an attachment, right? And how much is money a part of that? And to me, I agree with what you said about how it's both. You do need both. And again, not only was one of my problems with the movie that singleness was not an option, but also that it it was such a false dichotomy, in my opinion, that it's either love or money. And I'm like, hang on now. Like, we can't have both. That does exist. And also, most people need and want both. What that looks like can be very different. Someone's idea of financial security may be $50,000 a year and the love of their life, and that is great. Someone else's idea of security may be minimum $120,000 a year and someone they love and are comfortable with. So there's some flexibility in there. I think the other thing that you said that I find really interesting is about the tasks that anyone in a relationship wants, someone to do their tasks, I'll do my tasks, and we help make each other's tasks easier. I think that's really beautiful and absolutely what I look for in a partnership and even friendships, right? Like any sort of connection. I think that's absolutely what, well, obviously I'm biased because I think that's what I look for, but a well-adjusted person would desire. But I think one thing that is true in a lot of relationships is that we don't really realize the tasks that are offloaded when you do get into a relationship. For instance, like driving can absolutely become a task that one party in a relationship then takes on. Cooking, cleaning, these traditional housewifely duties often are discussed, but also in a traditional gender roles kind of split. Oftentimes, men take on the task of financial management of the household, right? Of lawn care, of all sorts of things. If we're splitting down the party lines, so to speak, and I think as much as it is nice to say, I have my tasks, you have your tasks, when you join in a partnership, you do inherently now have to take care of the other person in some way. And the difficulty with finances being added into that is I am taking care of you in some sense. And if I am the breadwinner, that is a dynamic now that we have. That is a power dynamic that is going to shift the way tasks look. And so you do have to weigh that, right? And a lot of men aren't comfortable not being the breadwinner, aren't comfortable doing tasks that they perceive as housely, womanly, nurturing tasks, but also some are, and it's great. And when you're in a partnership, like you said, how do we make each other's tasks easier should be the goal, but there's just so much that goes into that. And I think a piece that I also want to emphasize is that marriage is also a financial and legal decision.
It's a corporation. I agree. Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, I don't, they didn't really talk about debt much, and I don't know how much poor John has, but if you're legally married to someone, you also take on their debt, and that's a real consideration. Like, you don't have to get married to someone to have a life partnership, and I don't think someone needs to be rich by any means, but I'm not taking on your debt. Like, you got to figure that one out, you know? And that's such an uncomplex way to say that. And of course, now one day maybe I will be in a relationship where I choose to do that. But all of that. So, you know, I'm like, who's to say, actually? But so those are just some thoughts there. And then I absolutely agree with you about the height scene, about
Mm,
how it shows such a beautiful vulnerability in Pedro Pascal's character. And one thing that a lot of people have an issue with this movie that I've seen in online discourse is
mm.
how flat these characters are. And I agree, but I think it's intentional. I think it's that was one part of the movie that I actually appreciated, was because the director wanted us to see these characters as what they symbolically represent, not just the character, right? And so I actually thought that that was an interesting tool for exploring these concepts. And one thing that I liked about how the director kind of twisted this trope, but this was the scene where, you know, it's, am I still a unicorn? I thought was really kind of a powerful line. And I'll throw out there, because he got the full height surgery and he was 5'6". And I remember like sitting in the theater and everyone going, ooh, like just in the theater when he says it. And I'm like, my dad's 5'6". My mom's 5'6". I'm 5'6". So height is something that I have a very different relationship with than a lot of people do in dating. And I've noticed that's something that I don't notice nearly as much as some of my other friends do. Like, we'll be out at a bar, you see someone across the bar, and I'll be like, oh, he's cute. And then my friend will say, but he's kind of short. And I'm like, is he? Like, I didn't even clock it. And I think part of that is because my dad's short, you know, like he is a short man and I am the same height as him. And if we go out and my mom's wearing heels, she is taller than him. And that is something that, I don't know, I kind of have a weird pride in, but I think is absolutely such a thing in terms of security, going back to this question of security, right? And emotional security with men. So that was a lot, but would love to know your thoughts about the height specifically, because I totally agree. I think that that is such a fascinating topic and a really vulnerable kind of other side of this character. Like, it would almost be like, this is a weird example, but I'm like, what if you revealed that he like had a micro penis, right? Like, there's something that it's like, it has a similar feeling to that to me. But I don't know. I'm not a man, and I don't know what it feels like to be judged for my height in that way.
Yeah, it's interesting. Because in a sense, I don't either, because I'm 6'1". Miraculously in some senses, because my father was only like 5'8", and my mother was 5'2" on wearing heels,
Whoa.
probably. So, so yeah, so I, I don't. It's not really clear where I got my height from, other than my grandmother really prayed for it, and I mean that without joking. Which is
Yeah.
why I kind of believe what I believe. I don't believe God did it necessarily, but I believe her belief did
Right.
it. Because there's, I mean, I guess you could say better nutrition, blah, blah, whatever it is. I've never had that. It's never been a thing to me. And I'm not so freakishly tall where it's an anomaly. Like I'm
Right.
tall enough. Like things still fit me. I don't need special clothes. It's like So I'm blessed in that way. And I asked myself that question, like, gee, would I do the surgery, if I'd had the means to do so, and the answer is I mean, the funny thing is even as somebody 6'1", I wouldn't want to get 6 inches because 6'7" is ridiculously tall.
Yeah.
But you know what? Like, if younger me now, I wouldn't because I'm too old for this shit. But um, and I really don't care. But
Right.
younger me, 20 years ago, me, 25, in my 20s, I definitely might have considered even to get another 2 or 3 inches to get up to 6'3". From an athletic, not from a woman. It had nothing to
Sure.
do from a chase, or make, because honestly, I don't think six. I don't believe I'm considered short in any way, shape, or like that's not
Right.
it's not a thing. So 6'1", 6'3", 6'6", that doesn't matter. And at some point, it
That
might even be
doesn't
too much.
Yeah.
It's too differential. I think could be weird. But my point is though, for me, it would be like, I got what they were saying about the idea of enhancing yourself or investing in
Right.
yourself in terms of, and I really loved how Lucy's character was like, no, and he was, and Pedro was like, or Harry was like, hey, does this change anything? Like, do you still see me as a unicorn, as you pointed out? Um, and she was, and she was like, no, I, I feel like I know you better, which I liked. It was his honesty, or his vulnerability, I guess, to a degree. Although to your right, it's a little bit flat. Like, and I didn't really understand until he got up and they started the dialogue. I have to say, I did not quite pick up on the fact that those were like lengthening scars on his legs. I didn't pick up on that until they got out of the bedroom scene and
Oh,
then they talked about it.
that
Like,
was
I did not
something
pick that up right away.
for me when they talked about the heightening surgery in the beginning. I was like, oh, that's a Chekhov's heightening surgery.
Yeah, no,
Someone's
yeah,
gonna have it.
yeah. In retrospect, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
But I didn't make that connection immediately, and so my
Sure.
first thought actually was like, why is he so upset about somebody touching scars? Especially somebody you care. Like, to me, that was very. I mean, and again, it revealed a vulnerability, and no. I don't think it changes anything at all. In fact, I consider Pedro to be, or Harry, his character, to be incredibly smart about it. Like, I think it was a wise decision in the sense of, hey, you have the money, and it shouldn't and it doesn't have to. I mean, because here's the thing. Like, I believe you can present as 8 feet tall if that's what like,
Right.
because we think it's as a man sees himself, right? So if Pedro or Harry is like, yeah, I'm 5'6", and everyone, like, I know short kings, and they just don't see how they are kings. But because of that, then you should have the surgery, because if that's what it takes to change how you see yourself, then do it. If you have,
Yeah.
and there was a price for it. That it is an exceedingly painful surgery. In truth, from what I've read, I mean,
Yeah.
it is very uncomfortable for a very long period of time. It's not clear from a health perspective. It does. Your body was not designed to support that additional height where they break the bone in some
Right.
senses. And so I do wonder about 30 years from now, like my stepdad, who I talked about earlier, who was injured and,
Mhm.
really didn't hurt him until 20 years later. I don't know.
Right.
I think there could be a lot of joint problems, hip problems, arthritic problems, which would be the reason, if there was a reason why, I said back, 20-year-old me, 25-year-old me would have done that. That would be the thing that would have stopped me.
Yeah.
Was, okay, long term, what, now if you said, hey, do this surgery, it's going to hurt like shit for 2 years, but you're going to be Superman afterwards, and like, you'll gain this 3 inches in strength and everything's perfect, and there's no side effects, then yeah, I would do it, absolutely. I think I would
Yeah.
take pause, because we don't know what the body is such a system.
Yeah.
When you do, and 6 inches is a ton. Like, that's
Right.
so much. Now, I'm suspecting they're probably breaking both sets of bones, like both the lower and, fibia and tibia, as well as the femur, I would guess,
Mhm.
going on my
Oof.
anatomy lessons. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess the question is, so I don't believe you have, I believe you can be 5'6" and punch way above what others would say is your weight class, if you will,
Right.
and not because of who you are. Like, I don't think there is a restriction. The only restriction because of height is the one you put there, and in your own mind. because if you're self-conscious, like he even said it, like at 5'6", I wouldn't have walked up and hit on you. Like I
Right.
wouldn't have had the courage to do that. But that's a him thing.
Yeah.
Like that he knew himself. And so you have two choices here. You can say, well, I shouldn't be this way. I shouldn't care how tall I am. But, you can't fool yourself. You can't fool God, which is
Yeah.
yourself, right? So if you really, you might as well go ahead and have the surgery at
Yeah.
that point.
Well, and I think it poses a really interesting question about like investment in yourself, right? Because one thing that came up for me when I was watching it was how many thousands of dollars have I poured into therapy that I am like is absolutely worth it, has made me so much more proud of who I am, so much more confident in who I am. Um absolutely like just makes me more well adjusted, a happier, more joyful, uh more able to be healthily attached, like name any sort of positive outcome from therapy. I will espouse that I I'm like therapy's biggest advocate because of all of the wonderful things that it's given me. But yes, there is a difference in your mental and emotional health and your physical appearance, but physical appearance does impact mental and emotional health. And if we're boiling it down to investing in the self, it I agree with you that do what you need to do. And I think it's similar with like plastic surgery for women, right? That's something that's discussed a lot right now, especially. And or plastic surgery versus like Botox and more minor procedures, lip fillers, things that aren't as extreme, but you can still do these cosmetic surgeries. I think my take that I've kind of come to is, do what you need to do to feel confident and to fully love yourself, but also in making the choice to get this heightening surgery, to get lip filler, to yada yada yada. Again, like I said with Sophie's character earlier, I would start with the question, why don't you feel like you're good enough right now? And is there something there that we should maybe tackle first? And then go to a surgical um length after the fact. Like, because I can almost guarantee if you don't feel good about yourself before a surgery, whatever point of insecurity you have is just going to rotate to something else. Like, I remember my weight being such a thing like that for me growing up, even though I was always an athlete, was always in decent shape, but I just had in my head that I'm like overweight. I'm fat. I'm fat. I'm fat. And as soon as I lose weight, I will be attractive. As soon as I lose weight, I'll be attractive. And like sophomore to junior year of high school, I ended up doing Whole30, lost a lot of weight, and had to really, really work at maintaining like a certain weight. Like it was hard. I had to extremely meal plan and really plan out working out. And like it took a lot of mental and emotional energy to do that. And I didn't suddenly love myself. Instead of like my stomach being the issue, I started hating my arms, and my feet were too wide and my nose was a little too big, right? So all that to say, not that focusing on these things is inherently a crime. Like, it's your body, it's your life. If you're a public figure, I think there's something to say about being open and honest with people about it because of the message that can send young people, and that's slightly different discussion. But start with that relationship with the self. And then if you decide, this is going to boost that for me, cool, do it. But I think it bears further investigation for sure.
Yeah, I think so. And I think you bring up a great point, and maybe this goes to your earlier point about the characters being a little bit flat. Um, I do think it's hard to overcome. You can grow 6 inches through this painful surgery, and I don't know that wipes out, because I mean, he had the surgery 10 years prior, whatever. There was still 30 plus years of his life being 5'6" and dealing with all of the, the formative things that occurred. So just magically becoming 6 feet tall, to your point, doesn't your brain hasn't I don't know how much his brain really caught up with it. Now they did show the vulnerability he had when she was
Yeah.
looking at her, but again, he didn't lean into that at first. Like, it was something he wanted to, it was a secret. It was something there was a part of him that was ashamed of, right?
Well, and
Um
he had a ring. You were gonna propose to someone that didn't know that you underwent a major surgery. Like, no matter what the surgery is or what it's about, that's a traumatic experience. Like, that's a formative part of who you are. And again, that speaks to the whole point of the movie, The Materialists, that, you know, we can get married to someone and not have that level of depth of connection. And Pedro Pascal's character Harry was okay with that, was comfortable with that. And I think that this scene shows how Lucy was like, actually, is that what I thought I wanted? And it's really not what I want. But I agree with you. Like, you can't wipe out 30 years of feeling like I'm not good enough because I'm short. And also, other thing that just popped into my head, I wonder if there was like a spike in heightening surgeries after this movie came out, because it kind of, I don't know, it was something that like I had heard about before, but not super talked about. And that would just be an interesting thing to
Yeah, I
explore.
wonder if any of our listeners have thought about it or have researched
Yeah.
it or looked into it. I heard about it a bit ago. I mean, just came across it and was like,
Yeah.
huh, that's really interesting. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be for me per se, but I could see a world where that would make sense. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, people listen to subliminals to grow inches.
Right.
Like, and people claim that they have, and maybe they have. Why would I doubt them? I have, they're not trying to sell me something. So,
Yeah.
I have to believe that it is possible somehow to grow beyond, you know. So
Yeah. Well, and
I mean, I haven't done it. I can't I can't say
right.
for certain that it'll work, but it
Well,
should. I
if
mean,
you believe, right, versus like how many people that say it doesn't work, it's like, well, are you listening to the subliminal thinking that it's not going to work? Then, it's like
right.
then
Well,
we
it's
get
it's
into
that
the
constant. Are you believing hard enough?
right,
And
right,
like, are you really believing? And the answer to that is you're doing the best you can. Like
yeah,
you know if you are or you aren't. You know what you believe, and if you don't take the time to then take the time to sit with it and ask. I mean, a great question to ask yourself over and over again is who am I?
yeah,
And just and wait for the answer, and don't and just and keep asking until you get an answer. Like, who am I? And who is it that feels this? Who is it that is thinking this? Who is it? Notice and again, it all boils down to this noticing. Like,
yeah,
just notice it. Like for me, I noticed, things came up for me personally in watching this film. I candidly had a ton of body issues growing up. Ton of body issues. Still, I mean, they're still, they still exist. I mean, I would love to say, hey, there's no part of me I mean, every part of me is absolutely 100% comfortable with every part of me. I wish I could say that.
wouldn't
Like,
that be
maybe
awesome?
wouldn't that be awesome? No. I mean, weight
Yeah,
is a constant issue for me, and it troubled me a lot particularly when they called, Sophie, like the guy on the phone was like, well, basically called her fat and average. And honestly, I that bothered me because I mean, first of all, when I saw her, I'm like, wow, if she's fat, then I don't, what the hell? Like, like what a chance that so that brought up a lot for me, like from a body and the surgery, I think, brought up body image stuff. Like, but what I will say for me personally is it it also, you can only see how you've grown or how you've changed relative to some fixed point.
yeah,
You can only detect motion relative to something else, or like the earth is moving fantastically fast, but we have no idea that it is because it's all relative, right? Yet if we put a pin celestial cosmically, you are here, 20 minutes from now we're fucking thousands of miles away from that, probably more. I don't
hmm
even know. Somebody can do the math. But you wouldn't know that unless you put a pin in where you were before. So for me, what I noticed was, though, a shift in terms of, you know what? Yeah, like I felt that old part of me who was like, "Yeah, you're not good enough. Like, you can't do this. You you need these things. And I felt a part of me saying, pushing back against that not pushing back. Actually, there wasn't like really a big fight or anything. It was more of a, it's I don't feel that strongly about like it doesn't have the same hold on
Mm,
me because I've begun to recognize more and more who I am. And so it doesn't really matter. No, do I want to eat? Do I want to eat better? Do I like exercising? Yes, but I don't do it. I'm no longer doing it for somebody else. Like I'm no longer
right.
doing I'm doing it for me because I like I want to I have goals. I want to remain mobile
Well, and
throughout
you
my
you
life.
can't hate yourself into doing anything, right? Like that's something that I think about a lot with my body image as well, is that it's like I can't hate myself into taking care of myself. Like you have to believe that you are worthy of um feeling good in order to exercise regularly and eat good foods, because when I feel bad about myself, that's when I want something to comfort me and I might turn to a treat, right? Versus when I step into the mindset of I have been blessed with a healthy body. I want to celebrate that I have a healthy body, and exercising can be a celebration, or just body movement, right? Can be a celebration of this gift that I've been given. And when I'm sitting there hating my body and like, oh, I gotta go to the gym because I hate my stomach and I hate my arms and I hate my blah, 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 that's you're torturing yourself, into changing who you are. And I don't know, it maybe that kind of motivation does work for some people, but to me it just never has. And it just makes me feel like I'm fighting myself and I'm trying to change myself, as opposed to, like we always talk about, starting from this place of believing your inherent innate worth and then growing outward. And I love what you said about wanting to maintain mobility, right? It's like we can take care of ourselves, not just so that we can live a long life where we accomplish all of the things and experience all the things that we want to, but also I used to be a jazzercise instructor in my college days. I don't know if we've ever talked about that, but I love jazzercise. But there were several older women that would be in my classes, and it's like, yes, it is the thing from the 80s. No, there are not leg warmers anymore. The pop songs and workout routines are updated. It's your typical dance cardio class. It's awesome. But women who did it in the 80s still come and they're like 60, 70 years old, or like some
Oh,
women were like 85 in my class, like getting it. And it's awesome. And they would say, I'm the only one of my friends who can get down on the ground and play with my grandkids. I'm the only one of my friends who can hold my 5-year-old grandbaby. I'm the only one of my friends who can still drive. Like these things that it matters to celebrate about yourself. Sorry, I totally interrupted you and then went on a huge tangent.
no,
Um,
that was awesome. So I laughed a lot because my mother was a jazzercise nut.
oh,
Just
how
that's all
funny.
she ever. I mean, and it's just so because she did it. I mean, pretty much. I mean, until she died. I mean, until she couldn't because of the cancer, and even then, she would still try to go.
Right.
When on off cycles and stuff. So it's just so she was, and we would make fun of her for it too. But
Mhm.
that was her. She loved it. She did it for 20, 30 years. She never wanted to become an instructor or anything. But she would regularly go, and she would.
Yeah.
I mean, the cancer is what got her. I mean, physically, she was in great shape. Like, didn't have,
Yeah.
couldn't, I mean, she was always on the floor. Anyway, not an advertisement
Yeah.
for Jazzercise, but you know what? If you want to sponsor us, Jazzercise, we're here for you.
Hey, I will
Uh,
take all the
we'll
money
wear,
from Jazzercise.
we'll do a live Jazzercise class, Reese. You can teach me. You
You will
can
teach
instruct
one.
me, and so make it happen, Jazzercise. Somebody who sees this, send this clip to corporate. If they're,
Yes.
I don't know who owns Jazzercise. It's Jazzercise Inc., but we are there for it. I am there
Yeah.
for it. I love it. No,
That's
I
awesome.
think you're so right though in terms of the so that's the idealist side of me, and absolutely on board with what you say. The pragmatist side of me says, well, that's great, but use what you got. Like if that doesn't work for you, find something that does. And spite, because it was a very interesting portion of the movie where she was like, the bride was there were one of the Lucy's matches was getting married, and she was sobbing on her bed prior to the wedding and having a meltdown. And so Lucy asks her, well, why do you want to why do you want to marry this guy, sort of thing? And the woman, the client, says, well, basically because my sister thinks he's better than her husband, and I like the idea that I'm making her jealous. Which I think is a very vulnerable and in some senses honest, beautiful thing to say.
Yeah.
But my point in all of that, and then of course, Lucy turns it around with, well, yes, but you feel valuable, makes you feel valuable, blah, blah. And the
Right.
day is saved and the wedding goes on, and, Mazel Tov and all that. Which I don't know if that was even true or not. Like, it's not even really clear. There's no real resolution to that. Did
Yeah.
she, and is it wrong if part of the reason was to make her sister jealous? I don't,
Yeah.
is spite, but that's my point about spite. That's why that came up. If you know what, no, I think you want to always progress to the point where you do it for you, because eventually spite will run out. That's the problem. Like, I think spite or whatever it is to get that person to whatever the case is, that works as motivation, but it eventually falls down. It eventually falls short. But use that if that's what you got. Like, that's what the pragmatist in me says, because you fake it until you make it. And if spite is what gets you over that, is enough to get you moving to whatever it is your goal is. And we're talking physical, we're talking exercise or whatever here.
Right.
This is true of anything, whether it's to go back to school, whether it's to whatever it is that is in your life, that, to do this podcast, to open this business, to prove them wrong. Spite works. Don't is it the highest solution? No, of course not.
Right.
But I do want to say, like, don't wait for enlightenment to do something.
Well, and
use what you got.
I totally agree with that. Like, don't wait for enlightenment to do something. That's super powerful. And one thing that I've been thinking about a lot is there's a principle in chaos magic that is like, take your intention to the level that it's true. And lying to yourself is not good magic. Lying to yourself is not good practice. So if you are trying to believe that you are, I don't know, if you're working on like self-love, and I love myself, and you're repeating in the mirror every single day, I love myself, I love myself, I love myself, but you don't believe that, you're kind of just repeating a lie. And even though maybe you can trigger something in your unconscious, maybe you'll move the needle, but there's this principle that chaos magic says that take it down to where you can believe it. I want to love myself. Is that true? Yeah. Okay. Do I need to love myself? Do I believe that that's true? Do I believe that I'm worthy of loving myself, right? Like, how can we change this to be true? And then if you change your affirmation to, I want to love myself, I want to love myself, I want to love myself, and you believe that, at some point you can take that next step that is, I believe I can love myself, I believe I can love myself, and then I love myself, right? Until you can believe in the truth of that statement. And I think what you're saying about spite resonates with that for me, because it's like, you can't snap your fingers and be like, well, I'm completely confident and every single workout I do is going to be because I love my body and I'm celebrating health, and every single day I go on, I'm going to show up as my wholest and most true and most abundant, flourishing. It's like, we're human beings. We can't do that. So acknowledge the truth of where you are and use that for the forward movement. Like, that's alchemy. That's channeling that energy into something productive. So I love what you said about that. Another thing that I wanted to make sure we touched on, because you said you liked the ending when she ends up, they get engaged with their halal sandwich and flour. And it was so funny because this is one of the moments in the movie theater where I have one of my terminally single friends like me next to me, and then one of my has been dating her boyfriend for like 6 years friends on the other side of me. And my friend who's been dating her boyfriend forever is like, oh, my terminally single friend is like, ugh. So it was just so interesting to me. And I'm trying to like, okay, what's the nuance here? Like what's going on? And I came down to the reason why I was frustrated was one, it wasn't that, like, theoretically, she's like, okay, I don't love Harry. I shouldn't marry him, right? Like in the scene where they're talking about his height, like we were just talking about, that's kind of the realization she comes to. She sees the ring. She's like, I can't do this. Even though I have said it's really not about love, it is about money. That's actually not what I want. I was wrong about myself, and now I know that about myself. That doesn't mean she has to marry John. And how many times throughout the movie has she told us, this isn't going to work? This isn't going to work. This isn't going to work. And they tried, and it didn't work. And to me, at the very end, when they do end up together, it feels very much to me like she sacrificed a value that she had. And it didn't feel like he sacrificed very much to be with her. He does say that he'll set Google Calendar reminders to tell her that he loves her, which was a little like sweet in one way, but also like you should probably just like remember to love your partner without a reminder. But I get how some days like that's hard, especially after like 40 years of being with someone. So I get it. But he's made a choice to be a struggling actor, and that's a valid choice. Like, as someone who was an actor for a really long time, like, by all means, chase that dream, wait tables, be a cater waiter, and be a struggling actor. Like, do what you gotta do to be right with yourself. That doesn't mean that Lucy has to be along for the ride, even if she loves you. Like, I do think that there was some piece that was missing in that, like, love is really not all that a relationship is. And that's not enough for a relationship, in my opinion. There is so much more, like you said, about balancing tasks and taking care of one another that isn't just about the emotional investment you may feel. And she essentially came to this conclusion, like, actually, I can just change my mind, was kind of the resolution we got. And it just didn't feel perfectly satisfying to me. And even with her deciding not to take the job of like CEO or whatever at the end, which I think is a perfectly valid choice, that, you know, she was questioning the ethics of the job, especially after what happened with Sophie, and feeling like she was somewhat responsible for one of her clients being assaulted. And can I live with myself being in this industry anymore? I get it. Maybe I think that is kind of a separate piece of the puzzle from ending up with John. But to me, I'm like, that just because you realized you don't just want to marry for money doesn't mean you have to marry him. And he's still broke. And those issues are still going to be there. And even if you think you'll be a little bit more okay than you were before because now you've had this experience and grown, and maybe things will be different, it's 10 years later, I still think, like, if there is a lifestyle that you want to live, your partner should be on the same page about that lifestyle. And maybe she is fully able and ready to fully compromise and let that go. I would have liked to see him make some sort of compromise too, if that's true. Or her just stay single and be like, John's going to be in my life forever, because we do love each other. But we're not a right match right now. Maybe we will be in 5-10 years from now, but their lifestyles, as stated, aren't compatible. And I was kind of left with like well, what changed? Why can't she be single and just go get another job and be like, well, and now I have 2 friends, one that can take me to nice dinners and one that I love. And that's okay. Yeah, so that's kind of where I was left with that. And I was a little frustrated with the lack of compromise, the lack of options of singleness, and this false dichotomy between love and money that, of course, that's kind of the point that the movie is trying to make. So I understand why that false dichotomy was presented. But as a movie that's clearly trying to turn the trope on its head and clearly trying to make a point about modern dating, I'm like, you can absolutely find someone that offers you security both in an emotional sense and in a financial sense. Like, that's not an impossibility. Because even if you can't find a partner to do that, you know who can offer you financial security and emotional security? Yourself. You can absolutely do that for yourself. And, at the end, she does say, I'm a big girl. I can take care of myself. It's like, yes. And you were when y'all were dating, but you still didn't like that he passed up the $20 for parking and he didn't want you to pay for the $20 parking. So, how has that changed? I, I don't know. Ultimately, I agree we should choose love over money if it is a dichotomy. And so in that sense, it's like, okay, like I'm glad that she didn't just get married for money. But I think there's a lot of nuance that the second half of the movie dropped out that the first half really held. And in the experience of going through this movie, I was just like, it lost me along the way. And yeah, so I would like to hear your thoughts on that. And then I've also been witnessing a lot of online discourse about it. So I want to hear your thoughts, and then I'll share some of what I've seen online, and I'll share that with you too in a little bit.
Cool. I love that. Yeah, so I hearing everything you said, first of all, like I see what you're, I see that perspective for sure. I guess it just shows, it's a part of my personality, the grand gesture. Like, and again, I think it's the fantasy versus the pragmatism, and so my pragmatic side is like, yeah, you're absolutely right, but I don't know that other side, the other part of me that is fantasyful and trusts and believes in some senses in true love, I guess.
Yeah.
That, you
it's
know,
like, but they are in love, right?
I would, I didn't have as much, I didn't take as much issue with the ending. I mean, I agree it was a tropey ending, right? I mean, they didn't need to end in marriage. I mean, they could have done it Graduate style, I guess. I mean, but this wasn't The Graduate. I mean, this was, and I kind of liked how they had them going to the, the end scene as the credits are rolling are of a, basically the county hall or city hall where people are getting married, and they go and get married, and while the credits are rolling, they don't make a big deal of it. I don't know, the whatever part of me is romantic loves the idea of the aggression of that commitment. Could it go completely sideways? Absolutely. And to your point, what kind of odds are you giving that the marriage lasts 10 years? No, I mean, interestingly, I do feel like, I actually was more stressed about Lucy's decision to not like become the New York head of the matchmaking company than I was about her decision to get with John. Like,
Yeah.
I liked her decision to get with John. Again, that's the romantic side of me. Now, certainly there's the pragmatic side of me that says, damn, I mean, it's Pedro. Like,
Yeah.
like,
You're passing
dude,
up Pedro Pascal? Okay.
I don't know, man. I don't care if he was 5'6" and stretched to 6'0". He's a good looking dude. Like,
Yeah.
he's a unicorn at 5'6", let alone 6'0", I think, anyway. But no, I was actually more disturbed by her, and in my world, I hope she does decide to, make a big salary, and because I actually thought she was good at what she was doing.
Yeah.
Like, and I didn't think it was her fault that Sophie was
No.
assaulted.
Absolutely
I mean,
not.
they do their due diligence, I'm sure. Now, I will say, I did pause, interestingly, on when she was at one point, she goes into the bathroom after she finds out about the assault that occurred to Sophie and is reading through her notes
Yeah.
on the guy. And I actually paused and read that because I was curious, as, sort of did a quick. And what got me, though, is at the bottom, she basically wrote something to the effect of, this guy is charmless and not at all, is just a boring guy, like a very nothing like, oh, he's assault, like he could assault some, like none of that, because she couldn't have known that. There's no way. And to even think that she could, to me, was just like you didn't know. I mean, Although I guess you could say, well, he was charmless. So in some senses, yes, you were trying to do the best you could for your client. You had no idea he was going to be a rapist.
Yeah.
If indeed, like that's not your fault, though. I don't
No.
know how you screen for that,
The
because
the only
you
person whose fault that assault happens is the assaulter.
Yeah,
Period.
absolutely. Period. 100%. So I don't, but I did think it was there was an interesting point of, like, it did say the negative things about this guy in terms of he's charmless, like, and so there was this idea of pawning her off on him. So there was a bit of truth to that. Like, he was not a guy that you were like, oh, he's a great guy. I want, this was like, shit, I need to get somebody for her. So that didn't, but in general, though, I do think she was probably as good as anyone could be at this matchmaking thing. And I wanted her to take that job, because what else, to me, that it's so just interesting where it, again, I think it just goes to show, um, to me, the love was the right choice. Like, yeah, who cares? But, secure, okay, so this is you love this guy who wants to be an actor, and you respect that, and you think and you're proud of him for being an actor, and you think he's good at it. So support him, and you're good at this matchmaking thing. So why, this just seems like, the universe saying, hey, go forth and conquer, um so yeah, I guess, but I get where you're coming from, and I'm curious about the divide again between single versus somebody in a relationship. How does that, you know like, what is the like, does that fundamentally change? Or,
Yeah.
like, has is there what I thought was very interesting was this idea of, like, the whole time in the first half of the movie, she's talking about, he's got to be very, very, very rich. But then in her speech with Pedro or Harry when they're breaking up, it's like, no, you'll find your person. Your person's out there. And even stuff she was saying toward, which I really like, towards no, I believe you are going to marry the love of your life, to Sophie. That, you are absolutely going to marry the love of your life. I promise you that. I don't believe that. Well, you don't need to believe that. I do. I actually believe that's good. Like, I believe that
Yeah.
that's the quality, because coming at it from a coaching therapist perspective, my whole goal is to believe in the client when they don't believe in themselves. Because that's what I think the therapy is. That's where I think healing and growth occurs, when you have that unconditional positive regard, and you genuinely care about your client, and she does. Um so yeah, I thought that was I also thought there was a throwaway comment about how, hey, of course they trust us more than they do their therapists, because we're in the most intimate parts, you have to get naked in front of these people. And so I thought that was a very interesting
Mhm.
line as well. But I actually thought she was good at what she did, and so
Yeah.
I was actually angry that she was even not considering taking the job. Is
Yeah.
where interestingly, is where my head went. Like, what are you, an idiot? Like, you got them over, you're good at this. And furthermore, you're good at this. Like, you
Yeah,
should be
there
there,
there was a piece of me too that was like, with this lack of option of being single, also this like lack of option of, even though she says at the end, like, I'm a big girl, I can take care of myself, it's like, well, this job would be a way to do that. And not that she couldn't get another job that's well paying if she does end up having this ethical or moral objection to this job now. But it's like, you are good at this, and she could actually make an impact on people's lives and begin, like, maybe introduce a better screening process for your clients, right? Maybe better implement safety measures, better train matchmakers about not just checking boxes and comparing lists, but some sort of love piece being a little bit more implement. Like, there are things you can do to that she could have done theoretically if she took the job. And I think fundamentally an issue that I just have as well with the premise is this idea of, like, women still wanting to be taken care of and provided for. And granted, I think that a lot of that is both entrenched in internalized misogyny and also a reaction to misogyny, in that it's like, okay, you're going to compare me to all these women. You think I'm no better than a maid and a nanny? Then you better be making money, right? So I understand that impulse, but I agree with you as well that that was a piece of the movie that it's like, mm. And I wish that, like, even though I would be absolutely wrecked with guilt if I was a matchmaker and this happened. I completely understand why she feels the way she does. But from a therapized point of view, it's like, it's really not your fault. And you can't hold the guilt for something that you didn't do. All you can do is try to make right and do better in the future, um, to, like, learn from it. The thing about that I found most disturbing was how her boss did say, "Happens to all of us eventually." I was like, "Whoa, you know that this is gonna happen?" And, like, it's just one of those things, which I guess makes sense when 1 in 3 women have experiences with sexual assault, which I think the statistic is actually way higher than. I have yet to meet a woman over 18 that doesn't have an experience with sexual assault. So I think that that statistic is much higher than that. But
I gotta be honest.
I
I mean,
agree with
I'm
you.
just so shocked by that. Like that, I believe it, and I believe, as from my perspective, it just, I'm so shocked that that is true, and of course horrified, but when I say shocked, it's literally, it doesn't add up. Like, I don't understand it, if that makes sense, and uh, like, it's one of those things where, like, I don't understand why you would ever do that to somebody. Like,
Yeah.
I just I and maybe that's my neurodivergence and my inability to, I don't know, and I'm not trying to put myself on some pedestal. I would never do,
No.
nothing like
Yeah.
that. I mean, I don't think I'd be here if I I don't think we would be on this podcast, but uh, I just don't get it. Like, I don't get what would like, I can understand a ton of different things. Like, I can understand a ton of terrible, awful behaviors. I just don't understand, though, why this would be something you wanted to do. Like, why you would
Yeah.
want to, uh, uh, but yet it happens so much. And I guess I just want to say to all the women out there, I am so sorry that guys are so shitty sometimes. Like, I'm really sorry that you have to live your lives worried that, is this guy gonna try to take advantage of me? Is this guy gonna hurt me physically? And I'm just sorry. I'm
Well,
sorry.
it's really crazy the cognitive dissonance that it forces you to hold as a woman who wants partnership. Sophie's character, literally, right? Like, this woman who desperately wants partnership and has one of the worst things that can happen to someone happen to her because of her desire to want partnership with the same category of person that hurt her in this way. And so it's hard when you hear, like, the not all men, right? To me, that is such a hard uh thing to describe to someone, because on one hand it's like, yes, if we want to break it down and have a nuanced conversation, of course not all men are monsters that are going to assault women. The point of saying, like, all men are pigs or all men are monsters is that that is what women have to think when they interface with men. That is where we have to be in order to protect ourselves. And we're also told that that category of human that you are terrified of, that you need to feel physically threatened around so that you can protect yourself, is also the category of person that you need to procreate with and rely upon and take care of emotionally. Like, it really creates this tension within women in all of these societal expectations. So I appreciate your pausing on that and acknowledgement of that. Um and yeah, it just, I think it really colors the difficulty of dating in and of itself, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, I just, what comes over me is just the sadness. Like, it's and a resolution to continue to be a voice, that says that this doesn't have to be this way. Because that's what else, and I mean, yeah. So uh, and for any men out there watching this, I know if you're watching this, you're probably want to, you're one of the good guys, if there is such a thing. And I'd like to, I have to believe there is, because I do believe in the inherent worth and goodness of everybody.
Right. Same.
But I just, I don't know what could, I guess I'm curious, and I didn't know where we were going to go here, but what can men do, in your opinion? Like how can you be, how can we be better? Like
You
what,
know,
like what,
it's interesting because I think we've talked about this a little bit before, but mainly with like sexism and not necessarily with like direct physical assault. Um, and I think that with sexism, my answer in the past has definitely been like, be a voice. Don't just be a feminist when women are present. Be a feminist when it's just your boys. Like all of that, right? There's something that I saw this week that I've been thinking a lot about, and actually I'd be interested to hear your take on, because I know we've kind of talked about this and how you feel different than other men in connecting in kind of locker room-ish settings, that is not your kind of preferred environment to bond with people, right? With fellow men. There was a video that went viral on TikTok, I want to say, and I think it was a little bit older, but I saw it this week, where this guy was sitting down and making this video with his friends, like kind of as a joke. Like he was framing this as, ha ha ha, isn't this funny? And he was saying, it was him and like four of his friends, and he was like, so y'all know how like a few months ago I had to like move out of my apartment and like went through that horrible breakup, and she kept the apartment, and I needed to move out of the state and like find this whole thing, and she said that I was cheating and was like did all, like it sounded like a really really intense breakup situation. And as a viewer, you're kind of like, where's he going with this? Is he going to ask like, why did we break up? Or like, what, some question about like his relationship. And he goes, what was her name? And his friends are like, I don't know. And I was just flabbergasted that not only do these men like, it was like, these are your best friends. Not only was this an extremely traumatic experience for you, you had to move out of your apartment. It was a like life-changing, life-altering moment. She was also your partner before that. And they don't remember her name? Like, not even some random detail about like what was her job. Like, what was her name? And obviously I don't think all male or men's relationships are like this. I think this is an extreme example, of course. But what it illustrates is the lack of depth of connection that I think men normalize with each other, because vulnerability is considered feminine and considered weak. And I think when you hear boys say, oh, well, like, my bro would never do that. Like, my bro would never assault a woman. It's like, do you know your bro? Do you know that she wouldn't assault a woman if you don't know his partner's name? Like, and you hear a lot about how, like, oh, well, men connect through physical activities. Men don't connect through talking. Men connect in these physical ways, which I think there's some merit to, right? To like doing an activity that then allows you to open up. But really roundabout answer to your question, I think the way as men that you work to hopefully like make women feel safer is to create safety in your environments, in your groups. And with the male
mm,
loneliness epidemic, a big, big thing that's talked about is men feel lonely because women aren't picking them, right? How many men feel lonely because they're not picking each other? Like, you don't need a girlfriend to have an emotional support. Why are your guy friends not that for you? And women have worked and cultivated to create community among each other, to have these safe communities where we feel like we can be emotionally vulnerable and like show your soft underbelly and still hand someone the knife and feel safe with those women. Men don't
Mm,
do that. And I think it creates like a emotional constipation in a lot of ways that then can come out violently, and this feeling of lack of power and control, and not feeling like you have a place to connect, and you're told your whole life that you deserve an emotional connection with a woman, but a woman isn't giving that to you. So that makes me angry, it makes me feel worthless, and it makes me want to take control over that woman. And so I'm going to do the most aggressive, violent, power over action that I can in this sexual way.
mm.
And I
Yeah.
think, I don't know. I don't, obviously, I'm not a man, so I don't know what male friendships are like or men's friendships are like. So I would love to hear your opinion on that. But I do think from these things that I've been seeing and consuming and really reflecting on, there has to be space for men to feel safe being vulnerable and to emotionally connect outside of physicality and separate from women. Like, men's emotional maturity cannot rely upon women. And I think that's why you often hear so many people saying, like, well, your wife is just your mom, or you're looking for your mom. Like, I think that even though maybe it seems disconnected to say that that lack of emotional safety is what leads to assault, but I do think that it does. I think it's this,
Mm,
like, emotional neglect and abandonment that patriarchy does to men that then tells them aggression and power over women is how you break out of that feeling not good enough, and that leads to assault. But that's just like one theory, one thought on this. And so I
mm.
think, like, as a man, be there for your bros, actually ask them how they're doing and care about the answer, But again, sorry,
Love that.
would love
Love
to know
that.
your
Yeah.
thoughts.
So yeah, I think I really like what you have to say there, because I feel like men. I mean, my experience is it's very hard uh, to have these conversations with normal. I'll put in whatever that means. Normal guy
Right.
friends. And it's just not. It doesn't feel safe a lot of the times until and somebody has to be the one to make the first move, and that's in a there has to be a way to take that relationship to the next step where you feel comfortable talking about things. And I have a few friends. I'm lucky to have a few guy friends who every now and again I can have those real conversations with. Not a bunch. I don't have as many as I would like. And I have. It's funny. I have different friends for different sort of things to talk about. Like I'll be vulnerable in certain, but it's very compartmentalized. Like I don't know that I have any one guy friend that I am completely or or female, male, whatever. I don't have one
Yeah.
person
Well, and I'll
who.
say same for me on that front too. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But nevertheless, like I think the hard part is being vulnerable enough to admit that you're struggling in whatever that is. Yeah, and so I think when I love what you said about being there for your friends, and I think from my perspective, the way to be there is to be vulnerable yourself and show yourself. And again, you have to do so in a way that feels safe for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because not, I mean, it's true that not everybody out there is going to respond the way you want them to. It's funny. I was talking one of my best friends, guy I'm seeing in 2 weeks. Very excited. We're going on a little trip, a little guy adventure. And, but he has shared a ton of stuff that's happened in his life with me and vice versa. We've been very vulnerable and open with each other. And he's one of these guys who has tons and tons of friends. Like I would say he's a four. He's got a four line in his life, and so like his life is all about his connections. It's just so funny how that stuff is so true. Like
Yeah.
he's connected to a million people, but he has very few people he can actually be vulnerable with. And he was telling me how disappointed he was. One of his good friends, another good friend, he'd been friends with for many years, worked with, all of that stuff. And when he was going through a very difficult period in his life, his friend wasn't there, couldn't handle it for him. He couldn't be with him through the challenge that he was having. And he could feel that. And whereas I was there for him during that. And again, it's not to extol my virtues, because the Lord knows but that was a way I could hold space. And in
Right.
doing so, it grew our bond together, but I was vulnerable with him as well. And that I think is the hard part among guys, because there's this, like, I know personally, and I think this is true for everybody, you won't be vulnerable if you don't feel safe.
Yeah.
Because and that's true as a whatever the relationship is,
Yes.
therapist, coach. If there's not safety, you can't. There's no authenticity. There's no vulnerability. Um, and so I do wish there were more and I think it goes to this idea of what third spaces, right? That
Yeah.
there's not a lot of third spaces for guys anymore that are acceptable. Perhaps I don't know. I feel like but maybe they were never good to begin with. I don't know. I don't know what a good what is a good space for, like what is a safe space anymore? And is that something to build, maybe a safe community? Like how can you open up? How can men open up? And I'm kind of sort of going all over the place here as I
No,
process through
yeah.
all of this, but and but that there is such a value in having another man listen non-judgmentally.
Yeah.
Um,
I
and
wonder,
yeah.
with this idea of safe spaces and creating something like that, I think amongst friends, I totally agree with you. You need to create safety first in order to feel vulnerable. But also, vulnerability is part of cultivating safety. There is a chicken or the egg kind of conundrum in that aspect of relationship building, which is difficult. And Brene Brown has some really powerful research on that specifically in her work around vulnerability. I'll try and link that down below. But even then, like, there are certain relationships that I think you would still feel more safe to try vulnerability than other relationships, right? And so one of the other things I'm thinking about in terms of like, how do you create that? I'm also like, even if you created something that was like, this is a safe space for men to come and connect, how many men would show up? And which men would be the ones there, and you would still need to proselytize that in spaces that aren't self-selecting for that, because, not to generalize, but like probably the men that would go to something like that aren't the men that are going to assault women, and it's like
Yeah, there's a
it's
self-selection there,
yeah,
right? There's a
but
bias.
I absolutely hear what you're saying, and the start, like an object in motion will stay in motion and an object at rest will stay at rest. It takes an extreme amount of energy to push that ball, and that's kind of where we're at with this. Like, how much energy do you need to exert to push the ball of vulnerability to cultivate safety? um yeah, it's hard. And to tie back in some of the public reaction to this movie,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
there are a lot of people who are really loving the movie, and some people are saying like the rom-com is back. But a lot of women, especially my age and my demographic and like single women that are dating, are like, are you joking? this is broke boy propaganda. Like, if I'm going to settle, because they view both of these options that Lucy has as settling in some regard, if I'm going to settle in some scenario, am I going to settle for the guy that can at least provide the lifestyle I want, that says he sees me as valuable, or the guy that says he wants me to have children? And so there is this kind of like reaction that women are having that is, how dare in this day and age and in our current like economic climate especially, someone be telling me love is the worthy choice here, when that is not what I'm even looking for when I'm looking for partnership at this point, because I think that has been taken off the table for a lot of women because of what we're talking about, right? And when women are interfacing with men in this like frustrated, fear-based way, it's kind of like, well, if I find love, awesome. That doesn't seem very likely. Might as well take the trip to Scandinavia, you know? And I think that it's just really indicative. I think our conversation shows how much nuance there really is here. And again, a lot of these reactions and discourse online are on Twitter or on, you know, character limited platforms. So you can assume that these people are having these nuanced reactions, but kind of posting these things is a smaller encapsulation of a more simplistic idea of their reaction. And to that, I think that it is frustrating. Like, that's definitely something that I felt that was like, I don't want to be told that I don't have a choice to be single, and that if I'm going to settle, like, but settle for love. And it's like, I don't remember the last time I met anyone that it seemed like I could cultivate something like that with. And I think that the reality of dating is really frustrating for people right now. And that's why this movie, as opposed to so many others, has kind of received this vitriol. And then also other movies that set up this dynamic. I referenced Titanic in the beginning. The rich guy's an asshole. He sucks. In this one, Pedro's okay. So it's kind of like, he's not a villain. Why wouldn't you pick him if you have to pick a man? And then also in this, I think, again, I've said it so many times, but I'll just reiterate, big problem I have is that she has to pick one of them. And then also that it's a false dichotomy set up. And I think that that's what a lot of women my age feel, and are kind of sick and tired of being told you have to settle because you're a woman. And if you do settle, at least pick love because that's virtuous. And it's like, okay, but why should I have to pick the virtuous thing? Why do I need to make the moral decision? Why do I need to choose love? These men aren't choosing virtuous moral things. Give me the man who can at least buy me, I don't know, Chanel, whatever's important to someone. Yeah. So I don't know if that brings up anything else for you, though.
Well, I mean, I think it is a fundamental question, right? Is choosing love over financial security? I mean, because that's what the movie is presenting, right? So she chose love over financial security. So is that choice an empowering romantic decision? You know, a gesture that's empowering. So she's choosing love, or is it a risky decision for a modern woman? Like, what, you know, I think, you know, and so I'll put it there. I'll put it to you. You're Lucy. Like, no, you're saying I don't want to make a choice, which I think is a fair choice. But okay, fine. You know, it's a movie, so let's say a choice has to be made. So what are you choosing? Put you on the spot.
Dang. Okay. You know, it's so funny because I think saying choosing love is a risky choice for a modern woman is the perfect way to say that, because it is. She makes the risky choice. I think for me, because I certainly fall in the idealism that you've alluded to you having as well. I'm gonna choose love. Like, that is very much at the end of the day when I make choices for me. I mean, I'm not a struggling actor, but I'm certainly an artistic, creative entrepreneur who's not raking in the cash right now, but choosing my passion over being able to make more money doing something else. So that's certainly a choice that I respect. And financially struggling alongside someone I love does feel like a more in alignment with my values choice. And I would ultimately, if it was between one or the other, make that same decision. But I think that is the riskier choice. And I don't know if that's a smart choice, especially in for a modern woman. I would make that choice. I don't know if it's the right one.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I can see that. I can see that.
And then at the very beginning, you said the question of the movie really is, how do you define love? And I think maybe that would be a good place for us to end. Dennis, how do you define love? Both and let's say like in a relationship romantic relationship sense, because I think, of course, if I'm going to sit here and define love, I'm like, love is everything, love is light, love is all encompassing, like in a spiritual sense for me. But like in this sense of what is love, I think, is love value? Like, what's valuable to you, including material things? Is love security, right? Some of these concepts we talked about. What's love to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I I don't know. I genuinely don't. I think love is a knowing. I don't know.
Mm,
The is the best. It's it comes from outside of you somehow, I think. And it's it's like the Supreme Court definition of obscenity. You
right.
know it when you see it, kind of thing. And that's I think that's I do believe that. I I really I read this somewhere and I don't know, it really stuck with me in terms of we are all perfect, number one, but we are all seriously fucked up in some way. I don't care who you are, like, just own it. Like, so to me, love is whatever is fucked up with you, I love it. Because you know what? There's so much that doesn't matter. Like, but it's the things where we're ugly. And I really did, again, call me a romantic. I loved the line in the movie where he said, I think it was John who was like, "I just can't help but love you." Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't that is love, whatever that means. And could it be obsessive? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what healthy. I mean, as a therapist, there's definitions of healthy love, but you shouldn't need somebody else to make you feel valuable. I don't love that idea. Like, yes, you should. If you're with somebody who makes you feel not valuable, who is making you feel bad about yourself, you shouldn't be with that person. Like,
Right.
honestly, I mean, or you should talk. I mean, frankly, you should have a conversation with them around it and talk about it and like, hey, it really bothers me when you do this. It makes me feel like I'm not valuable, and talk about it and see, is this something that I should, I mean, there are hurtful things that you shouldn't accept and if the person keeps doing it, blah, blah, blah. So, but to me, it's this idea of I don't really understand why. I just can't help but you're the person. I really love the grave buddies. Like,
Mm,
that is really what it's about. Like, is this person the person I want to be my grave buddy? Because that's all. I mean, at the end of the day, we live alone, we die alone. I mean, that's you die alone. But I it- that there was something very powerful to me about that. So that's what I'll say in terms of to me what love is this, yeah, is just loving whatever's wrong with this person. Like,
yeah.
whatever's
Yeah.
wrong with you, it not only does it not bother me, but I find it endearing. Because I mean, think about a habit of like soup, right? Like slurping soup, right? Like, some people slurp soup, and we've seen movies where it's like, like the old couple sit, but it's all in how you frame that. And if you're with somebody you love, that becomes endearing, not annoying. And
Yeah.
when you're not with somebody you love, that becomes annoying. And they even had that little monologue in the show of in the movie of like they're sitting watching the wedding, and it's like, well, we're gonna have this passion, but then we're gonna grow cold, and we're gonna have kids, and we're gonna hate each other, and we're not blah 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 blah. And if that's your assumption, sure, could that happen to this fictitious couple? Absolutely. But yet that little part of me is like, well, if it's really love, it won't. Maybe
Yeah.
that's not true. It is a risky decision, but maybe inherently love is that. I think there's a beauty in that.
Yeah.
There is a beauty in that surrender. This idea of I can't help but love you.
Yeah.
And I want to love somebody like that. Like that's what love should be. I don't care. And maybe I shouldn't even be saying this. Maybe they'll take away my license. I don't know as a therapist. In this, I mean, and again, I'm not suggesting you should be in an abusive relationship,
Right.
but you have to examine. I think love does exist. I believe everybody has their person, and you have to get married. No, I mean, there's no. I agree with you. That is a false dichotomy that society has pressured us into. This idea of requiring a marriage and put a ring on it and this that, and I don't think you need to have that. But I also understand why people want that. I mean, there is a deeper meaning to it, I guess. Yeah. I don't. That was really long-winded because I think it's an impossible answer to
Yeah. No, I
question to
agree.
answer. But what about you? How do you answer that same question, Reese?
It's so funny because the first thing that came to me was love is a choice. Listening to you talk about it's actually the opposite of a choice. It's something you can't help but do. And sitting here thinking about it, I'm like, I think it kind of has to be both. Like there's some piece of it that is just so inevitable, so like magnetic, so like a force of nature, just one of those things that like it feels like a law of physics that I don't know why it exists. We don't understand that, but we know it's here. Like I don't know why gravity works, but we know it's here. I don't know why my love for you works, but it's here. And I do think there is some element of that in love. I also think that there is a choice aspect in choosing that, even when it's hard, because I don't think that love is enough for a successful partnership. And I think that there is something about like being a teammate that is love to me, that is like, um, there's something so frustrating, like, when I was playing competitive volleyball and like back row would dig like a really great dig and I would just like have the most beautiful set you've ever seen and it's like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. And then the hitter hits it into the net and it's just like, oh, like it's so painful.
Sure, sure.
But love is like, but we're on a team and it'll be me next time. And when after the play and they're like, damn it, I can't believe I did that, I'm the one that's there saying, don't worry about it, we got the next one. Like that is kind of the vibe in a relationship. I think that it's like, not that you don't get to be frustrated because it's like, seriously, that was a really good play and you just hit it into the net, but at the same time it's like we're all gonna hit it into the net, but that's why we're on a team together, so that you don't feel like you're doing that alone and like you're the only one who messed this up. Like you said, the not just flaws, but also mistakes are part of what endears you to someone. And one thing that I've come to in my own life is as much as I abhor change and my nervous system freaks out when anything changes, that is still something that I have chosen in my life to be the only constant. I never want to not be curious, and I am actively choosing to grow and change throughout my life. Like, that is the one thing I will commit to for the rest of my life, is that I will always be evolving. And if I partner with somebody, that's also a commitment to supporting each other's evolution. And that means as we change, like, we're not going to be the same people we were when we had this, like, force of gravity love that requires choice. But at the same time, I do think there's something constant about the inherentness of who a human being is. Like, there are certain elements of, like, Reese-ness that do exist that I don't think will ever change. And I think that that's kind of true of love too, that it's like maybe there's a core of it that is like the same as a human being, that it's like there's some core that I can't really define or describe that is constant and inevitable and a force of nature. But there's all of these moving pieces around it that are choices and decisions and commitments and evolution in your love that is similar to a human being. So I think it's both inevitable and a choice and ultimate teammateship, in that you support each other. And also, I'm going to set you up to spike the ball, and I want to give you the best set possible. And then when it's my turn to hit the ball, you're going to give me the best set possible. And it's interesting. It's like you can only really describe it through metaphor too, right? Because how do you really define that? And even looking at my relationships, that it's like I had been in love and like now I'm not. There was something that felt like inevitable, despite all the things that I know that like me and this person don't share these values and this part isn't going to work out. But yeah, I love this person anyways. But ultimately, those lack of values were the reason, or lack of alignment in values was the reason why it didn't work out. And yet that inevitability that still felt like love was there, right? And it's like, well, I do think that was love. I don't think that that was a false love. But I did fall out of love. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's both a choice and an inevitability.
I love that.
It's
I love that.
messy.
It's messy, it's crazy, it doesn't make any sense, and yet it never fails. Like, I do genuinely believe that love never fails.
Yeah.
If there is God, God is love. Like,
Yeah.
that is the truth. I just would want everyone to have that love, whatever it is, you know? Um, and to not give up on it, and to not settle. I mean, you know, whatever settling means, and I think settling can be different things for different people, and that's
Totally.
okay. Every person has to decide what settling means for them. And there's no judgment or shade or anything else. And if some people, it may be, hey, this is what, you know, like the lady in the show with the 3-page list of what she wanted. Like, that's okay. Like, good on you for having that. You know, I actually don't have an issue with that. But you have to accept the fact that, you know, you're ordering something complex. It may take a while, you know, again, depending on how things work, you know, depending
Yeah.
on how much of it is this plane versus other planes versus
Yeah.
chaos magic versus intention versus,
Right.
you know, versus invoking Citri to, you know, bring you somebody. I don't know, what the, I don't know. But it's interesting when you notice things. Like, again, and do I think this movie is like some great movie? No, because it didn't even get great reviews on IMDb, to be honest. Like, it's no Shawshank Redemption. It's not going to take over
Right.
the top spots. And I think there is a message there that's interesting. And I don't know that you have to agree with the dichotomy, because I think you've made incredibly salient points there. I don't think you have to agree with her decision. I don't think any of that, but I do think it's a good movie in the sense that it does make you ask questions
Hey,
about
we've just talked about it for 2 hours,
Yeah,
and
right.
there's more that we could say,
Oh,
right?
so much more. Like,
And
yeah,
that is proof of concept.
yeah. I mean, so it's interesting. Just one last thing.
Yeah.
So apparently, and I found I read this online, so I can't say I created it, but the um the director, so Celine Song, is big into astrology, and so she imagined all three main characters as Earth signs. Lucy is a Virgo, John a Taurus, and Harry a Capricorn. It's not overt in the film, but it's a delightful Easter egg, saying that Virgos are known for being analytical and self-sufficient, and being Lucy. Tauruses are steadfast and value emotional security, John, and Capricorns are ambitious and status conscious, Harry. So, that I thought was very, there's so much more we could talk about, but given how much we have talked about and the intentionality of the director to put that in, and I can see that, but I'm curious, just does that spark anything?
Absolutely. As a Virgo myself, I'm like, okay. Interesting. What does this make me think about me? But I absolutely see all three of those. It really does resonate. And to go back to them all being a little flat, it's interesting that they're all Earth, that there is a certain lack of evolution that we see in these characters. And again, I think that's something that Song is being critiqued for. And I do want to give Song a little bit more credit than that. Even though I don't love the movie, I think that her intention behind it is clear, and that she directed a very specific performance from three extremely talented actors. I don't think it's for lack of skill or chemistry, because like even in the press tours we see how much chemistry these actors have. I think that there was intentionality there that was interesting to me, and there were a lot of really interesting choices. I just think the ending didn't land for me, but to know that she put that in, I'm like, she's clearly thinking about these things. And even if it wasn't able to perfectly communicate maybe all of the nuances and complexities that I wish it was, it sparks conversation, and that's what good art does. Like, good art is the conversation that happens in the car ride home.
Yeah,
So
yeah, absolutely. I'm
yeah.
curious, of the three. So, assuming that given that this was written with that in mind, the idea um, the Virgo, Taurus, and Capricorn, would the just would a Taurus or a Capricorn in general be considered a better? Is there one that would be better, for out of curiosity, for a Virgo? And again, I think there's a danger in using any of that, like to say, oh, I'm only
Right.
going to do. So I would, but I'm just curious. I'm just curious
Yeah.
if there would, because I know like there's certain signs are generally considered better with other signs, and obviously,
Yeah.
this is a simplistic reading. It's just sun sign. It doesn't. There's so much more to that. So let's just.
Yes.
But I'm just curious.
You know, I don't know. There probably is like some official determination of which one would be more compatible that I don't know off the top of my head. But for what I do know about the signs, what I'll say is Virgo and Capricorn have some very similar traits in terms of like incisiveness and structure and practicality that I think is very much reflected in these two characters. That like Virgos and Capricorns are good business partners, um whereas Taurus and Virgo would be better like homemakers. They would be like good at um creating warmth together. Like, I think Taurus would bring out a Virgo's um nurturing capacity, whereas in this sense of like the goddess of the harvest and abundance, whereas Capricorn would bring out this structure and drivenness in a Virgo. I don't think either would necessarily be incompatible. I think a more compatible sign would be one that's maybe a little bit more adventurous, or like emotional would probably be a little bit more opposites attract. But I think that's really fascinating in terms of like, that is kind of what we see in these two couples in the film, actually.
Yeah, no, what you said was
Yeah,
exactly true. I mean, like, it was a business arrangement
yeah,
between it would have been a business arrangement between Harry and Lucy, right? I mean, that it
yeah,
was, and maybe some, and I mean, that's an arranged marriage, right? I mean, that's been done in the world for this marrying for love thing really wasn't done for most of, most of human existence. In fact, so is it a wonder that we maybe struggle with it in that this marriage has always been a business contract. I mean, in
yeah,
very real senses. Is that the disconnect? And
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know, but
yeah. It makes me think of one of my favorite lines from The Office where Dwight's talking about soulmates for some reason, and he says, "Well, statistically, the love of my life is somewhere in China." It's like, yeah, it's like if we're playing a numbers game and you actually believe that like there is this one soulmate for you, like statistically, where are the most people? Like, in
yeah,
it, yeah,
yeah. I mean, I can't say that I believe in soulmates to that degree
right,
of like one. I would say there's a soulmate energy or something
yeah,
like that because otherwise I mean, it seems to me it would be very difficult to ever find your soulmate. It's sort of on the
yeah,
level
right,
of the Good Place. I don't know,
yeah,
of like fake Eleanor.
yes, yes,
Like
exactly,
sometimes I feel like fake Eleanor, but I
yeah,
think we all do. But
yeah.
well, awesome. Well, good
This
stuff.
was great. I loved hearing your take on this. I think this was really fruitful in so many ways, and I knew that you would have some really great thoughts on it. As soon as I watched it, I was like, we need to do an episode on this. Dennis is going to have opinions, and because it is so fascinating, and it really, like, modern dating and how that impacts women is just such a reality, and I'm so glad that we're talking about it, and that, even if we can't completely change things, I do feel really confident in that we're moving the needle, and that's something I'm proud to be doing together.
Likewise, likewise. Well, thanks everyone for listening. We can't wait to see you again next week, and
Yes.
give us your thoughts as always, and we'll talk. We'll see you on the flip side.
Yeah, let us know. Would you pick Harry or John? And we'll see you next time. Bow Down is a weekly podcast from the Cohere Collective that explores esoteric and empowered feminism.
Please subscribe to Bow Down wherever you may be listening. And if you enjoyed the episode, please leave us a like, a 5-star rating, and a review. And if there's anyone you think would enjoy this episode, or maybe just needs to hear it, please share it.
If you want to stay up to date on all things Bow Down, you can follow the Cohere Collective on any social media platform at the Cohere Collective, and check out other content and offerings at www.thecoherecollective.com.
If you're interested in working with Reese to find and pursue your purpose, I encourage you to head to www.thecoherecollective.com/life-coaching.
If you're interested in working with Dennis to shed your mask and embrace your desires, you can email Dennis at dennis@theheartstoybox.com.
A huge thank you to Jack Corbett for Bow Down's music. You can find him on Instagram at j.corbe. Thank you all for joining us today. We're so glad you're here.
And as always, we hope you feel like you are living more coherently. And until next time, love.